Hey YouTube. Okay, I'm gonna give you a testimony today that was on my daughter's healing. She was uncontrollable epileptic. She was diagnosed back in 1990. This right here is I don't know if you can see it very good, but this right here is a testimony letter that I had typed up in 1990 that, you know, so that I could share it with everybody. But I took it to my pastor and everything, and my pastor pointed out during a class that we had everything that was wrong with it. And the main thing that he said was that you yourself cannot lay hands on any individual and for their healing. That this would have to be done taking them in front of the church. Well, I was waiting because of him saying that. I felt like I might have done something wrong or I might have missed it somewhere. So I've held on to this testimony letter and everything and really, shared my daughter's healing and everything, but, just didn't, I've been waiting on confirmation to do this video to make sure that I wasn't trying to teach anybody in the wrong way or anything. So I got my confirmation the other night, and it was while listening to Liberty Broadcasting Network. And if anybody is, if you get a chance, that is an awesome place to go worship and learn about the Lord and everything. I advise going over and checking out Liberty Broadcasting Network. It's an awesome, awesome bunch of people. But anyway, with that being said, this is going to be, it's a lengthy testimony. It started out with what seemed to be like fainting spells. And we went, it was extremely hot that year, so, we wasn't really sure what was going on, but we was going to the doctor and everything, and it took like 3.5 months to finally diagnose her as being an epileptic. But throughout all of that, I kind of had a feeling that this is what might have been wrong. And because my older sister is an uncontrollable epileptic who has the grand mal seizures. And you have to forgive me, I switched my seat so I wouldn't be swinging all over on y'all. But anyways, I'll sit still. So anyways, my older sister is an uncontrollable epileptic. And even to this day, her seizures has calmed down and everything, but she still, has grand mal seizures. And as I was growing up and everything, I remember just crying out to the Lord. She had so many seizures that, and they was so bad that, she would foam at the mouth, and, her nose would run. And when I was in school, they would always come and get me because they didn't know how to take care of her. And so I would go take care of my sister in school. And so, when my daughter started having these, what we thought was fainting spells and everything, she had the petit mal seizures. But 3.5 months later, after CAT scans, MRIs, and everything, they diagnosed her as an uncontrollable epileptic, just like my sister. And they said she was uncontrollable for the simple reason they tried every kind of medication that they could give anybody, and nothing was touching her seizures. And so I was really, I felt like that part of her came from me, so I was blaming myself, that my daughter was having to go through this, and all I could see was my daughter having to live like my sister did. And so anyways, I was telling a friend of mine about it and everything, and she says, Rose, she says, don't you understand? She says, that's spiritual. Anything of the mind is spiritual. And so when she said that, this little light bulb went off in my mind, and I was like, it's spiritual. And so I went and I searched in the Bible. Now, the way I was raised and everything, I was raised that healings aren't for today, that they happened back in the Bible days and Bible times, but they just didn't exist or happen today. And so I started searching out everything in the Bible that I could get my hands on healing and everything, and, reading about our authority and everything. And so I went to my pastor. It was a different pastor than the one I was talking about that didn't want me to share the testimony. And he told me that because of my lack of faith and everything, that it just wasn't going to work with me laying hands on her because I wasn't believing. And so he told me, he says, I want you to do one thing. He says, when you go home, he says, and your daughter starts having these seizures and everything, put you some praise and worship music in. And so that's what I did. I went and that night, I mean, it seemed like after the sun went down was when she started having more seizures and everything. And so I put the praise and worship music on, and I could not believe it. I mean, the seizures calmed right down to the point of she wasn't having seizures anymore. And so, the battle was on then, because I knew this was, all this was coming from Satan. It was just, and he was attacking my daughter. And so I started, and it wasn't an instant healing. It was a battle. It went on for, oh my goodness, probably a good 3.5, maybe 4 months. But I kept telling Satan, I said, you're not getting my daughter. And in the meantime, I just kept strengthening my faith and doing different things to strengthen my faith. And one of the things that I did was, you know, my sister had come over to have dinner with us and stuff, and I thought, well, I'm going to check this out and see if this is really real. And so when she was sitting up at the table and we was eating, and when she went to have a seizure, anytime she would start to have a seizure, she would try to get to another room because she didn't like having seizures around people. And so she went to in my living room, and she sat down and she went into a seizure. And I thought, aha, I'm going to go check this out. And so I went in and I grabbed her hand and I said, in the name of Jesus, I command you to tell me who you are. And her head, no, this is 100% truth, people. I mean, I'm not lying. I have nothing to gain to tell you this and lie. But her head was down on her chest, and she went like this and rolled up and growled at me. No kidding, she growled at me. And so I took her hand, threw it down, and I was like, oh, never mind, I don't want to know who you are. And I was like, stupid, stupid. Rose, don't mess with something you don't know what is yet. And so, but that was just confirmation to me that this is, a demonic spirit that is attacking all these people that's having these seizures. And another thing that the Lord pointed out to me was the wild child in the Bible that was, brought before him, that the father brought him and he was falling on his face. And the Lord pointed this out, that, this was an epileptic seizure. It would described it to a T, because he was foaming at the mouth and, and just throwing himself and just convulsing. And that was, an epileptic seizure is what that was. And the Lord healed him and he cast those demons out. And, but anyways, like I said, it was a lengthy battle getting this thing out of my daughter and everything. And I was laying hands on her all the time and just rebuking this spirit in her. This one particular night, I mean, she was having seizures one right after another. And I put her in my room in my bed, and I mean, everything had got calmed down, and she was I thought she was about ready to go to sleep. So I went ahead and I left the room, and I went out in the living room, and I was sitting with my husband, and all of a sudden I heard my daughter just holler. And so I ran in the bedroom to see what was going on. And she says, Mommy, she says, something made me bite my thumb. And she had her thumb, and no fooling, she bit her thumb so hard that it was almost to the point of bleeding. And I was like, what, Sally, how'd that happen? And she says, oh, well, I had a sharp tooth right here, and I was feeling it, and something shoved my thumb in my mouth and just made me bite it. Oh my goodness, it was on then. I went and I got my Bible, and Sally and we turned the light on, and we sat up, and I thought, Satan will just read the word to you. And so we just constantly kept reading the word and reading the word and reading the word. And so, like I said, it was a real bad battle getting this spirit out. And so, another particular time, the Lord had showed me that Satan was gaining his strength when people was around, because I didn't want to cause a scene or anything. When people was around, people didn't understand. And so I just kind of slacked off when people was there, and I wouldn't rebuke this spirit and stuff. And so he showed me that this is where he kept gaining his strength back, was through those times. And so what I did was, I had my brother-in-law was over this one day, and Sally had gone in a seizure, and just in an instant he showed me that. And so I went and I laid my hands on her, and I started rebuking the spirit that's was in her. And the spirit, I don't know if it was a lot of spirits, or if it was just the spirit that was in her was so strong, it was just stubborn and just didn't want to leave. But anyway, it was just one heck of a battle getting this demon out of my daughter. And so anyways, so a couple nights, goes by or whatever, and she was having seizures, one right after another. And so I kept going and laying hands on her. And so this one particular night and we're getting him whittled down, where he's starting to get weak, and it's starting to finally come out. And as this night here, she, I was rebuking it, like I said, and she could see this this spirit coming out of her. I couldn't see it, but she could see it. And she would say that it was coming out her neck, and it was out the palm of her hands, and she kept saying, "Mommy, get it off, get it off." Now my daughter was 6 years old, 5 or 6 years old when this first started, and it, she was healed, and then this thing come back because I backslid. And I went to my pastor and I told my pastor, I was like, she was healed and everything, so what's going on? Why is she having seizures? He says, you opened the door and let Satan come back in. And so, we had to start battling it all over again. And the second time that we had to battle it was a lot stronger. And so, once you receive your healing, man, don't open that door. Don't open that door, because when they come back, they bring company with them. Anyways, so now the spirit was coming out of her hands and out of her neck and everything, and I knew she could see that she was seeing what she could see, but even though I couldn't see it. So what I was doing, I would just reach up and grab it and just throw it away from her, acting like I was getting it off her, because she kept saying it was hurting her. And so we anyways we got through that night and everything. And this other particular time, before she was completely healed, um, I had to go get some groceries and everything. And anytime I ever had to go get groceries or leave Sally or anything, I would always ask the Lord put angels guard over her and protect her while I was gone. And so she wanted to take a bath while I was gone. And the second time the spirits came back and everything, Sally was probably, maybe 9, I'd say 9 or 10. And she wanted to take a bath, and I had a garden tub. And so I told her, I said, well, I don't care if you take a bath, honey. I said, but don't draw a lot of water in it, because I had an aunt. See, this was a generational curse that has been going down through my family for generations. Come to find out, after doing some research and stuff, all the way back through, like my aunt, she had epileptic seizures and had drowned in a mud hole. And so it just went way back. But anyways, so I told her, I said, well, go ahead and take a bath and everything, but don't draw a lot of water. And so she promised that she wouldn't. Well, kids, while I was gone, she drew that bathtub slam full and was laying in the water just soaking, And she waited like 2 weeks to tell me about this, because she thought she would get in trouble for not listening. And so she said when she was laying there, she laid there with her eyes closed, and she was just floating in the water. And she said all of a sudden she heard this voice, and the voice said the voice says, sit up. And so she opened her eyes, she looked around to see if somebody was in the room, and she didn't see nobody. So she said she just laid back there anyway. And she said the next time the voice said sit up, he says, I said sit up now. And so she said he's out, she thought she might better listen, so she sat up, and she no sooner sat up and she had a seizure. So, that I thank the Lord that I said that prayer for the Lord put angels guard over her, because he certainly did. Because she would have drowned if she would have had a seizure in that water. Okay, getting back to the healing and everything, the last time that Sally had a seizure, and there's so much more to this whole testimony and everything, but, the Lord's getting his point across as far as, letting you know that this is something that is, a spirit. It's a demonic spirit, and that if your children are having this, it needs to be taken care of. This one particular time, I'm gonna tell you this quick story, and then I'll get back to the last time she had a seizure and her healing. And my sister-in-law was in a car accident which left her paralyzed, and we was at the hospital visiting her and everything. And I was up visiting her, and they had to do something with her trach or something where we couldn't stay in the room. And so I walked outside you know, just to take a break and everything. And when I went outside, the ambulance was pulling in.